whenever I'm laying out a rule book, I frequently need a paragraph style that will be used for the basic body copy. As you can see in this example, there are multiple levels of headers. I use bulleted lists. And beyond just the text, the coins and the boards that I use in this rule book, for example, have a object style that is the bevel and the drop shadow and the very thin white stroke you can see around those objects. And it would have been really nice if I could have made an object style or paragraph styles for all of these different things ahead of time, right when I opened up the project, so that I didn't have to go through those cumbersome initial steps. Thankfully, there is a way you can do this in InDesign. On rulebooks, I frequently have headers, body copy, usually a sidebar typeface or style of some kind. So what I like to do is set up all that stuff ahead of time so that when I launch a new project, it's already in the paragraph styles panel. Before I have a document open, I'll go to Windows, Styles, and start playing around a little bit. Let's say I pull up paragraph styles. And in that panel, I'm going to expand here so you can see it a little bit better. I can have a body serif paragraph style. Let's open that up really quick. Under the body serif paragraph style, I've set up a fairly standard, very traditional font, Minion Pro, regular, 11-point/14 leading. And under the advanced character formats, nothing's really unusual here. I have set up a first line indent that pushes in a little bit over 3 millimeters. Rather than having a tab, which I rarely use anymore since I'm not doing these full-length role-playing game books anymore, instead I'm going to impose a space after. And typically I like to make a space after half the size of the line leading, or the line spacing. So under indents and spacing, I'm just going to go ahead and call that 7 point, and InDesign's going to automatically convert that to metric for me. Turns out, oh, it's just a little bit shy of 3 millimeters. Cool, would have known. So with that done, I can also set up tabs and all the other normal things that you would want to do in a paragraph style for body copy, for example. So I've got that set up. And what happens when I just start a new project? Well, let's close this really quick here and start a new project. I'm gonna go to print and just pick a letter template. I want this to have facing pages. Cool, I'm not even labeling this for now. Let's just open this up and see what happens under the paragraph style panel. Look at that. This is a brand new, fresh document, and it already has my body serif paragraph style. So how far can you push this? Well, let's close this up really quick and start this again. Under the window, styles, paragraph styles, let's make something else here. Let's make a new style, call it heading 1. And if my body copy is a serif font, then something that would stand out from that is probably a fairly straightforward sans serif font. Let's call that Helvetica, regular, and it's going to be very boring. Well, make it a little bit less boring. Call it Helvetica Black. Make it a little bit bigger, maybe by 3 points. Keep the leading the same, and remove the space after. The downside of setting up your workspace and your palettes this way is that you don't really see what your headings and all that stuff look like ahead of time, unfortunately. So you got to be pretty familiar with what these fonts and things look like, and I'm pretty familiar with how this all turns out. So that's cool. I'm fine with that. I'm gonna make a new paragraph style, and I'm gonna duplicate that style. I'm going to make it a child of heading 1. I'm going to call it heading 2. And the only thing I am doing on this is making it the actual size of the body copy. I'm going to make it not quite as bold. So let's, instead of black, let's just make it Let's do black condensed, make it something a little bit definitely subordinate to the heading 1 paragraph style, but otherwise pretty much the same. Cool. Now I have 3 paragraph styles ready to go. I'm going to close that, open up a new document, and let's look at the paragraph styles panel. Hey, look at that. Let's see what we can do here with some type. You know what we can do in InDesign too? This is a little bonus tip here. You can fill with placeholder text under the type menu, and down here is fill with placeholder text. And InDesign will automatically fill your text field with some random Latin. And let's drop some paragraph breaks here. Let's call this heading 1. That's what heading 1 looks like. Let's see what heading 2 looks like. Cool. And there you go. It's a very simple, very bare bones way to speed up one part of your process. And that's just paragraph styles. That isn't even getting into some of the other things. Let's try something else here. So that was the styles. And as you can probably tell, you can do this with object styles, for example. Say, for example, you have, in our case, I have to make rulebooks a lot with diagrams that frequently have cards on them. So let's just say I call this card. And the only thing I'm doing on this is I'm giving it a black stroke. I am making it very thin, just 20, like a quarter point thickness, very, very faint. And I am, let's say, filling it with white, or paper in this case. But really the thing I want to do is adjust the corner options. So I'm going to skip all this other stuff and I'm going to look for the corner options. Here we go, stroke and corner options. This is where I can adjust the stroke alignment. So let's say I want that stroke to be outside of the object. And I want the joins to be round. Sure, why not? But that's going to be not really relevant in this case because I am going to be making my corners rounded and I want them to be consistent. I want them to have a 5 millimeter rounded corner. Cool. Now when I close this and start a new project, let's see what happens. I have the card object style in my object styles panel. Hey, look at that. I've got a nice rounded rectangle. No matter which shape I make it, it has the same object style that I have chosen early on. Now, this isn't always going to work with every context because, as you can see, it has made a 5 millimeter rounded corner regardless of the scale of the rectangle. So in some cases, this tiny little rectangle here looks like almost a circle, whereas if it's very big, you barely notice the rounded corner at all. But it's a nice start, and it saves me just the additional step of having to go through all that. At least a big part of this has already been done for me. Similarly, you may have noticed that when you first got your InDesign installation, that the color swatch palette had a whole rainbow of colors, and you had them every single time you opened up your document. Now for me, I was very annoyed with that, so I quickly deleted all that. But you can do more than that. You can go to your swatches palette, and you see that I have just a pure white or black option here. But say you do want some particular colors that you will consistently use. Say, for example, you're working on a series of projects that frequently have the same branding color associated with them. Let's say you're working on like a very popular soda brand and they have a very particular red that they like to use. You can just go ahead and make that swatch, and in this case you may even want to not name it the color value, but actually go ahead and name it Cola Red. Add that swatch to your palette. Now say you may have also another soda brand that you're working with. Call that Soda Blue, and you will mix up your swatches a little bit, get that blue just right. Cool. Now, closing that up, starting up a new project, and tell me if you've heard this one before. As soon as you open up a new project, With all of these changes, if you go to your swatches palette, you'll find that those swatches have already been ready-made for you, and they're consistent no matter how many times you've opened up a new project. So this is very, very useful for expediting the initial steps that you frequently have to go through in any kind of project, whether it's a rule book or a card layout. And you can extrapolate from here. Any of the changes that you make during this process will become the new default whenever you open up a new document. Swatches, object styles, paragraph styles, the works. Explore it, see what you think. And then you can also explore the Creative Cloud library options that are available in more recent editions of InDesign. But I want to focus on some of these very basic, bare bones, non-internet connected options for changing the defaults, just in case you happen to have an older version of InDesign. If you have any other tricks that you'd like to share with the rest of the group, please leave them in the comments below. Till next time, thanks.
Hello, thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed it. If you want to download more stuff and more content, you can find it over in the Patreon at the link below. Thanks very much. Bye!